Well, diplomatic efforts continuing today to try to find a solution to the conflict in Gaza. Let's get the views from Sir Jeremy Greenstock, Chairman of the United Nations Association in the United Kingdom. And a very good afternoon to you, Sir Jeremy. And the priority here is, of course, to get the rockets, the guns and the shells to stop being fired.
Yes, and Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is occupied with that at the moment. I don't think there's a role that the UN can play immediately. The parties to the conflict, Israel and Hamas, have got to come to some decisions themselves. But one begins to ask, what's the point of this further round of violence? What's the point of escalating? What is Israel's strategy in all of this? And I'm at a loss to explain that at the moment.
Well, I mean, could it be, it's been pointed out that they've got a general election looming at the beginning of next year, also wanting to send strong messages to others in the region who may threaten them?
That's true, and I think the use of violence against Gaza is to some extent a deterrent for Hamas. But remember that Hamas has not normally been the instigator of violence against Israel. Since Operation Cast Lead 4 years ago, they've been mainly passive and containing the militants in Gaza. If Israel wins this by invading Gaza and taking out the Hamas leadership, it owns Gaza, which is a tremendous problem for the future. If it doesn't take out the Hamas leadership, it looks as though it hasn't won this round. So the options are quite bad for Israel, whichever way it goes.
And longer term, though, Sir Jeremy, and for so long a solution has been sought for. But fundamentally, those in Gaza and Palestinians more broadly have to be offered some sense of hope.
Well, the people within the Palestine territories, they call themselves in prison at the moment, are in despair. They see the world changing around them and nothing changes for them. So there is despair and a lack of hope for the future. The pity about the current violence is, to my mind, that it is not necessary. I know from my own contacts with Hamas that they are prepared to talk. They want to discuss a truce. They would be prepared for an indefinite truce into the future. Israel does not want to talk to them as terrorists. And their militants are still making the mistake of using violence. But this round of violence is not necessary to take forward the possibilities of a negotiation for the future. People need to talk to each other, and there are decisions to be made in that respect, and I hope that's going to happen soon.
And so, Jeremy, you mentioned those contacts you have within Hamas. What assurances do they need from the Israelis?
You're quite right. There is a complete absence of trust at the moment. They want assurances that it would be possible to set up a separate Palestinian state with the proper instruments for that to have some sort of equality with Israel. They are not fixated, as so many people seem to think now, they're not fixated on the destruction of Israel. They know that that is not realistic. They want their own separate state, and they're prepared to negotiate for that. They want to see themselves taken seriously as potential negotiations for the future. That would make a tremendous difference from the Israeli viewpoint.
Well, following your analysis, somebody then, and it presumably can only be the Americans, need to twist the Israelis' arms.
The Israelis' arms are not easy to twist. They will make their own decisions. I don't see a solution being imposed even by a second President Obama term. The peoples in the two territories, the Palestinians and the Israelis as peoples, have got to come to some point when they realise they've got to live together without violence. And when that point is reached, I think there is a discussion that can flow quite quickly. But you're right, that point hasn't been reached at the moment.
But given the wider ferment in the region, the upshot of the Arab Spring, the huge conflict in Syria, Iran's nuclear ambitions, the list could go on. Is this the prize? Is this the key to unlocking that?
The other problems have strong characteristics of their own, and indeed have taken the headlines over the last few months, if not years. But Palestine can be linked with any of them. Palestine is the entirely flammable situation that can make any of the others much worse. It's not worth treating Syria on its own, Iran on its own, without also looking at what could be done for Palestine or what would come out of Palestine if it wasn't treated. It really does need treatment now.
And Sir Jeremy, let's bring it right back to the here and now. Things are very, very finely balanced. We've been talking about the straws in the wind of ceasefire, a diplomatic solution. Well, not a long-term solution, but to stop the violence. If it goes the other way, if Israel gets those boots on the ground in Gaza and starts going from house to house, what then might happen?
Well, I think that will actually get a reaction from wider in the region. Egypt is not the Egypt of 2 years ago and will have to take its own decisions. The Egyptian foreign minister is due to be, maybe even the president will turn up in Gaza over the coming days. Syria is changing. North Africa has already changed. The Gulf is changing. I think that the region will react in different ways from the past. They will care more this time now that the Arab Spring has taken off. That's the danger that Israel faces in its own neighbourhood.
And Sir Jeremy, you mentioned the Egyptians and the position they're in, a very different nation, as you say, from 2 years ago. Are they pivotal in trying to get this violence stopped?
They are a very important third party. I don't think they can yet play a pivotal role any more than the United States can. It's got to come from within Israel first, because Israel is in physical control of these territories. It's got to come from the two peoples. How that is arranged is a long way away at the moment because of the accumulation of events. But Egypt can play a sensible third-party role and could eventually be a broker of something different. Yes, I do see that.
Sir Jeremy, lots of food for thought there. Thank you very much indeed for your views. Sir Jeremy Greenstock there, his views on Gaza.